Hi everyone, welcome to the release video for version 5.1 of the Portal Connector. I'm John Newell, the Customer Success Manager at the Portal Connector, and I'll be taking us through our new features. The team has been hard at work adding new functionality, including a new scheduler widget for managing a calendar of activities or other date-related entities, new FormFlow nodes now allowing you to send emails or fire workflows, added functionality for the new PowerBI API, a party list widget to allow associating multiple leads, accounts, or contacts to your CRM activities, new enhancements to the migration module, and lastly, a brand new auditing module to track user behavior in your portal. So first, let's take a look at our brand new page widget, the scheduler. For any of our pages, we can drag and drop this widget on to display a calendar that will allow us to view, add, edit, or delete any date-based entities we wish to display, such as activities like we can see in the example here. Here on our portal, I have dragged and dropped on our scheduler widget to a page here. I've also configured it to be working with our activities entity, so we can see some of our logged in users' activities being pulled into our calendar. I've set the default view here to be month, so when the user first navigates to this page, it will we can set what view they land on. We also have some other views enabled, so we have a daily one set here to see all of our day's activities. The same thing for weekly, so same sort of style. We also have an agenda view here where we can see a full agenda layout of all of our upcoming events. If I go back to the month tab here, if we hover over any of these events, you get a pop-up displaying the full details of that event. I've also enabled inline editing and adding, so if we simply double-click an empty space on our calendar, we can set and create a new event to be added into our schedule here. And the same thing for double-clicking an existing event, you can edit any of the details for that event or delete if you would wish to. So now that we have an idea of what we're working with here, let's jump into the back end and I can show you how to configure the widget and all of its many options. So we'll go to the back end and we'll go to our pages. I'll go to our scheduler page. Okay, so now I'll just delete our existing scheduler and I will just start fresh by dragging and dropping the scheduler widget onto the page. I'll click edit so we can configure this widget. So here is where we can allow adding of records or editing of records. So when I select these, I can now choose to pop up a new page if we wanted to take the user to a new page. So we would just select a page and we can do like an add appointment in this sort of style. You could do the same thing with a pop-up, or like I showed earlier, you could have this be an inline add mode. So the same thing is true for our edit options here, so different page, inline, and pop-up. We can choose to allow the user to delete the records. You can adjust the security mode based on if it's just going to be the default or actually based on the logged in user's role. You can allow exporting of records to an Excel format and also allow rescheduling of your various events. If we move over to the settings tab, here's where we can change up the default view. So we see that the default view here is set to week. I had adjusted this so that upon landing on the page it will show you the month view. You can also change up those views, so we had the daily, the weekly, the month, and the agenda. If we wanted to remove one of these, so say we wanted to get rid of the weekly view, and we can also add additional ones. So from this list, if we wanted to pull in, maybe just display the work week, if that's all that's relevant to us. Under the Data tab, this is where we will define the entity that we want to be working with to display the information in this scheduler. So here I can choose to grab our activity entity, and I'll just click Load Default Fetch to load in our default fetch XML. I'll click Build so that we can pull in some additional attributes. So what I would want to include in here would probably be something like the start date and the end date of each of our activities. So we'll grab start date, we'll grab due date. We can grab a description of the event as well, so we'll pull in description, and that should probably be enough for now, so we'll just click Save on that. So here under Fields, this is where you would actually start to tie some of that pulled in fetch XML back to the scheduler. So where is the title of our event coming from? We can define that here. We could so we'll set this to subject. And the description is obviously going to be our description. We can enable the duration here, so if we want this to set this as our start date, and instead of setting an end date, we could just set if it's going to be 1 hour or 30 minutes or so on. We could then set our end date down here. So this is going to be our due date, so scheduled end. And here's where we can define if this is going to be an all-day event, where we're going to pull that information from. Lastly, we just have a filters tab where we can define some of the filters to narrow this information down to just be relevant to our user, as an example, instead of pulling in every single activity that is scheduled in our CRM. So with that, we've configured our scheduler, which we've already seen in action, so we can move on to our next feature. Next up, we'll go over our 2 new FormFlow nodes. I'll go into My Profile and drag on our FormFlow widget. We'll click Define Flow, and now on the right you'll see we have access to 2 new nodes, Email and Workflow. So the process is the same by defining your starting form. We'll choose a personal profile. We've also added a new form setting in here that will let you customize the submit button text if you'd like to update that to register or next page or something like that. Then I'll drag on a page here to take us back to the home page after we've submitted our form. Then we can start dragging on our new nodes. First up, we'll drag in the email node. We'll trigger this to send after the user submits their personal profile. So to start, we'll choose the sender profile that we wish to send the email from. Out of the box, Sitefinity connects to Mailgun, Mandrill, and SendGrid email services, but you can also define your own sender profile, as I've done here with the TPC internal one. This is defined on each email node in case you have multiple form flows or emails that need to come from different senders, like a support address or an admin address. Next, we'll click Edit Email, where we can create the contents of the email we wish to send. In the To field, I can type in my own information if I maybe wanted to enter a static email address. So I'll just type my email address here. You will also see this drop-down list appearing that is picking up all the fields that were available on the form that we are submitting from. So we can use these fields to grab the user's email address, for example, and send the email to that. The same functionality exists here for the CC field as well as the BCC field. For the subject, we can just type profile updated. Now lastly, we can type the contents of our body, where we have access to all your typical email authoring functions. However, we also include the ability to insert fields from your form directly into the contents of the body as well. For example, we can pull the user's first name from their profile to personalize the body and say, "Hi, first name. The changes to your profile have been submitted successfully. Thanks, the TPC team." Now, after clicking Save, our email node has been fully configured. Next, we'll go over the Workflow node, which will have similar functionality to our existing Workflow form widget, allowing you access to fire the on-demand workflows you have set up in your CRM as a step in the FormFlow process. I'll drag and drop the Workflow node into our flow here. Here we get a drop-down of the CRM workflows that have been created for the entity of the form that we are coming from. So in this case, the contact entity on our personal profile form. So we have an existing workflow through our CRM that notifies the account holder of any of the contact's information is updated, so we can choose this workflow to fire after the user submits their personal profile form. Our only other option is to choose if we would like this workflow to execute asynchronously, which will schedule the workflow to be submitted in the background and allow you to continue in cases where the next steps in our flow might not be dependent on the results of the workflow triggering. Lastly, we can click Save and Close. We will publish our page and return to the front end of our portal. I can show our new flow in action by submitting our personal profile form, and while the workflow will be tricky to show the results of, I will receive an email to my personal inbox with the email we had set up and our user's name, so Jim in this example, displayed in the body of our email. So that covers all the new features to FormFlow, and we can move on to our last page-based widget improvement, our new and improved Power BI widget. The updates made to the Power BI widget now allow us to connect through the new Power BI API. So where before we could only display a full workspace report, we now have the option to embed an app report, an app dashboard, or an individual app dashboard tile onto your portal pages. This way you can create some pretty cool displays on your portal pages with this new added flexibility that the update provides. So moving on to our last widget demo, we'll move over to Forms and we can take a look at the Party List widget. The Party List widget, as its name would imply, allows us to connect to party list type fields in your CRM. So acting almost like a lookup, the Party List widget allows us to search and associate multiple contacts, accounts, or users, or entities of that type to an activity. As an example, we can open our form we used to create a new appointment for our scheduler and drag and drop in a new Party List widget. Now we can assign one of our Party List appointment attributes like optional and required attendees or the appointment organizer to this particular field. We'll choose optional attendees and move to the Data tab. Based on the attributes we've selected on the previous tab, we will be presented with a different list of entities here that we can include in our party list. So for example, if I change the attribute to organizer, we can now only pull data for the system user. So I'll switch that back and we can select which entity we wish to work with. We can select account, contact, and system user here. With our entities selected, we can expand each option and define the fetch XML that will be used to pull the necessary attributes for these selected entities. I'll just load the default fetch for these right now, but you would be able to use this to narrow and filter your results accordingly. Moving along to the other tabs, appearance and filters give us the same options we've seen on previous widgets, allowing for empty placeholder text, tooltips, and for filters to be applied. I'll click Save and we can publish our new form. Now on the front of our form, we can begin searching for contact names. We can search for account names and system users to be included for our optional attendees on our newly created appointment here. So that'll cover everything to do with the Party List widget, and we can now move on to our new additions to the Migration Module. We'll navigate to the Migration Module from Administration, Migrations, and then click Migrate. If you're familiar with the previous Migration Module options, you'll see we've made some additions. You can now choose to perform the migration at a future date by deselecting the Now option and choosing the appropriate date and time. You can select Recurring to set a schedule for when migrations should take place. Here we can choose to migrate to our new environment on an every minute or hour, daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly basis, and set the times at which to perform the migration. On the right, we have now expanded the list of export options to allow you greater flexibility on the types of data you wish to migrate, now allowing you the choice to export website templates, indirectly related pages, forms, and media. This way, you could now choose to perform a one-time full migration, then on a more regular basis only choose to migrate over forms and media, for example, or choosing to not migrate all indirectly related pages, helping to expedite the process and cut unnecessary migration tasks at the user's preference. Now our last feature we're going to go over today is the brand new Audit Module. Again, we can access the module from Administration, this time selecting Auditing. Here we can choose to enable auditing and enable the option to track all queries that are made to our CRM. On the right, we can enable auditing of back-end user behavior, choosing to track either all or individual user data behaviors, including logins and logouts, login attempts, as well as page, template, form, and content item creation, updates, publishes, and deletions. For our front-end users, we can choose to track, again, login information, pages the user navigates to, form submissions, CRM record creations or updates, file uploads, as well as the user's Sitefinity and knowledge-based search queries. The Audit Module currently supports exporting of captured audit data to a raw Excel format, and we are currently in the process of developing a full list of canned reports that can be used to better visualize and more easily parse your portal's audit data. Lastly, we have a Delete All Audit Data button, allowing you to purge your collected audit data. With that, we've covered the major additions to this release. For more details, you can always view this version's full release notes at crmportalconnector.com/developernetwork/release notes/version 5.1. Thanks very much for watching.